All right, we are live. Okay, so hey everybody, we have Steve and PJ here with the little red dog, and they are a Best Life rescue partner. But we're going to talk about a few things today, like how to prepare for a dog coming home before adoption. We're going to debunk some myths about rescue dogs. But first, I'd really like to start off by talking about just the little red dog in general. What drove you guys to start a dog rescue?
Well, thanks for having us. We appreciate it,
Thank you
Liz.
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think Steve's background's a little bit different. So his journey was a little bit different than mine. So I'll let him talk about it really quickly too. But, I guess I've been doing dog rescue all my life. I just didn't know it was called that. I'm rescuing strays and bringing home kittens, boxes of kittens, whatever. So, back, I don't know, it was 2011, I guess. We had our own consulting company, and we were kind of in between projects. So I was looking for some volunteering opportunities, and I tried to volunteer with a bunch of different rescues, specifically a pit bull rescue, because we had just gotten our first kitty, and we wanted to try to give back and help people, educate people on that breed. And I just found a lot of rescues. Everybody who is in rescue has a huge heart and great intentions, but they maybe don't know how to run a rescue properly, because you really do have to run it like a business. You have to get back to people. You have to keep your website updated, things like that.
Yeah.
So, we had tried really hard to work with somebody else, and we really,
Well, you did.
I did.
I could have cared less.
I was volunteering him also, because the one rescue that I was trying to work with, they said, oh, we need help with our volunteers, blah, 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 and we need help with our website. I'm like, well, Steve can do that. And he's a graphic designer. He's really good at the technology. But they never came through. They never, like every time we offered, they never came through. Which is, I think, is pretty consistent with a lot of rescues. Again, all run by volunteers. So are we. But, I think that we had business background and marketing background, and so that really helped us, I think. So I had read the book, The Lost Dogs, which is the book that Jim Boardman, who is a Sports Illustrated writer, wrote about the Michael Vick case.
Yeah.
And obviously that hit home. We had a pity, and it was very sad. And I just really, I read about the little red dog in there, and it was a pity that didn't want to fight. And they actually beat her to death, which I know is really sad. But what we want to do is pay homage to that dog and others like it, and just, dive in and start rescuing. I knew we could do it. So we did dive in, and we started working on it. And Steve, I kind of brought him kicking and screaming along.
Right. Screaming mostly. Yeah.
But I mean, that's basically it. I mean, we just, we knew we wanted to do something. He's being facetious. He is very good at it. But it really didn't start that way. He really was like, I don't know why you're doing this. We have a lot to do. But once he got into it, he was really the one that started digging into the dog behavior and figuring out like why we're getting dogs back, or why people were surrendering dogs just in general. Because we were getting a lot of dogs that were 18 to 36 months, really a lot in that 24 months. And, I think Steve was really the one that was like realizing that's when the dogs are in their kind of teenage years, and they have these behaviors that might have developed. Yeah. And so, so he really started diving into that and really understanding that, and started teaching our volunteers, our fosters, and everybody, that our doctors, that, and it really has made a difference. So I think I answered more questions than you really asked.
No, I love it. I love it. It's awesome. But I am curious with how, PJ, you said you had already kind of had a background of animal rescue, you just didn't know it, which I love so much. I am curious, like, Steve, what is your background with dogs? Like, what did you do before this? And
well, I mean, I'm a typical, male moron. I like trying new things. I'm not really great at much of anything, but I think the one thing that fascinated me, really, to be honest with you, is we were failing when we would adopt to families. We were getting dogs back. And I think,
a lot.
Yeah. And so I love biology. I love science. I love math. So I started studying, the way dogs think, and what causes people to give up on their dog. And really what it boils down to, it's this simple. Dogs need a leader. They need someone who's calm and confident. It's not about love. Of course, we all love our dogs, but it starts with discipline and exercise, right? And so, once I started diving into that, I found it fascinating. And it sounds weird, and it sounds like voodoo, but the more you start focusing on dog behavior and really trying to get good at it, everything else will improve. Your business improves, your relationships improve, sports improves, because in essence, you're really just trying to be a calm, confident leader, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that we can always respect, especially in today's environment, right? And so I think for me, I found that fascinating. Of course, I love dogs.
But you didn't grow up with dogs.
No, not really.
So you didn't.
Okay. Yeah.
At the beginning, he didn't really understand why you would want a dog.
No, I'm doing just fine without them. Why the hell do we want this chaos in our house? Obviously I've changed my mind. I love dogs. I can't imagine my life without one. But having said that, it is difficult. It's a lot of work. As you have dogs, you know how hard it can be. You know what you have to do right before your show starts. You know all this extra crap that you got to go through to give this perception that we know what the hell we're doing, right? Because of that, it's not for everyone, right? And you can be the sweetest, most sincere human being on earth, but maybe not a good dog owner. And that's our job, is to figure out, are you going to be good with dogs? And if you are, please adopt. But if we feel like you're not going to be a good dog owner, then we feel like we're actually doing you a good service. We're keeping you away from the ER. We're keeping you away.
Doing you a favor.
Right? Yes. Yeah. But
well, it's funny because there's actually, we get a lot of hate mail when we decline people. People get upset. They want their way. They want the puppy, whatever. But it's been interesting because there have been enough to note of several people reaching back and said, I wanted to adopt a dog. You declined me. And that was probably the smartest thing you've ever done. Because I adopted a dog from somebody else and I'm in trouble. We've heard that quite a few times. So, so again, we're not trying to be jackasses. We're not trying to keep you from having a dog.
We do that naturally. We don't have to try.
That's already done.
Yeah. We want everybody who's capable and really in it for the long haul. But too often people treat the dog like a pair of shoes at Nordstrom's. They're just sort of trying it for a little bit and seeing how it's, and then they want to return the dog. And for us, obviously we'll always take the dog back, but it does put a strain on the rescue. It's harder on the dog, so we really are just looking for people in the long haul, and we do equip them with a lot of tools and information and education.
So that was actually that was like a good segue into my next thing I want to talk about, was about like debunking some myths, about dog rescue, about rescue dogs. And one that popped up in my head as I was just kind of thinking of like common myths is, and I guess it's not really a myth per se, but a perception of, I've heard a lot of people say, I ended up not adopting or not going through a rescue or a shelter because it was too difficult. It was too hard. It's like they didn't want to give me the dog. And there are some things, like there are some stipulations of adopting a dog that I think are a little like, a lot of places won't let you if you live in an apartment, or if, you've never had a dog before, which that's like, I get that one though. There's some things that like, it makes sense, however, let's debunk the myth a little bit more of when people think that way, and let's help people understand more as to like, adopting a rescue dog is more difficult than like getting a dog, from a breeder. So let's kind of like dive into that a little bit more and kind of explain the reason behind those things.
Frankly, it should be a little bit difficult to adopt a dog. It is not a pair of shoes, right? It is not a purse. So it's a living, sentient being that has certain needs, just like us, right? So it shouldn't be so hard that people get discouraged. But frankly, if you're a breeder, I know there's the term reputable breeders. So let's just say if you're a breeder, most of them, if you bring the check or the credit card, they're going to give you the dog. They're not going to worry about where the dog is going, right? Because it is it's
transaction,
right? It's a transaction. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. So with us, I really don't know. I don't think breeders take dogs back. I don't think that's the case because we see a lot of purebreds in the shelter. So I think that it should be a little hard, and you should think about it. And so that's why, and I've had several people where we know they're not qualified, and they'll say, well, we're just going to go to a breeder. And I know they're going to, and they're going to get a dog. But I can't let that dictate what we do with our dogs, because what I know is probably 9 times out of 10, that dog is going to end up in the shelter or with a rescue, or they're going to have issues with the dog because they're not really ready, or it's not really a good fit. And really it is for us about the right fit, right? So you may want to come in with you want a puppy, but you're gone 12 hours a day. So I might steer you to a slightly older dog, like a 1 or 2 year old dog that, can be alone, versus a puppy. Or you may just be a super couch potato and you want this really powerful breed that is really going to require a runner or somebody who's going to exercise that dog over and over and over again. So I'll try to guide you to a different dog. It doesn't mean I don't want you to have a dog. You just may have to change your perception, your expectations.
I like that. So it's almost like going through a rescue or, going that route versus you're actually going to end up with a better result. It seems like a lot of rescues I've talked to and have experience with, they almost try to, like you said, I like how you said, guide you, to like what would be best for you. And sometimes, that it's a hard truth of you
Right.
don't need a dog in your life. I've had to face that fact and it sucked, but there are other options. You can volunteer, you can like babysit dogs, and things like that. So I love that we can kind of clarify that. What do you think that rescues could do, or what do you guys do to kind of help people understand why the process is such a difficult thing? Is it like transparency or like explaining, certain reasons?
Well, one thing that we try to explain to the people that come to Little Red Dog when they're wanting to get a dog is, look, if we were a county shelter or a city shelter funded in such a way by either the state or the county, we would be way more lenient. Yes. Well, I'm getting there. There's no way that she's not going to interject when I am talking. It's just impossible.
It's true.
Can you tell we're married, everybody? Of course, I still want to vet people. Absolutely. But what I'm getting at is it's a big deal with our group if it doesn't work out, because you have to bring the dog back to us. We've already given the foster another dog, so now we don't have a spot for that dog, right? So it causes us major problems if someone adopts a dog and then that dog goes to that house, and then again, we put a new dog in that foster, so now we don't have any room, right? So we're very picky. And I think once you explain to someone why we're picky, they kind of get it. I would love to be a little bit more lenient. But even as I'm saying that, it still presents a problem because we don't want these dogs back in the system, right? We don't want these dogs to possibly get euthanized.
Yeah.
And
you also don't want them in a home where they're like unhappy.
Yeah, absolutely. And people's perception of dogs is always a little wrong. It's really difficult to get people to understand that we know you're going to love the dog. That we're never worried about that. What we're always worried about, and what we're testing people on, is can you be a leader? Can you be a calm, confident leader? Right? If you can't, that's okay. Start learning. If you think it's too much to ask, then don't get a dog because you're going to be miserable, right? And I think once people kind of see that and experience it, they're very successful. And by the way, I don't care if you're never owned a dog before. It's been our experience that if you've never owned a dog before, you're going to listen to us and be very successful. The people that we have the most problems with are the people that I've had dogs my whole life. I know what the hell I'm doing. These people tend to fail because they've been lucky prior to this. They've had dogs that genetically listen to the human. People fail when they get that stubborn dog, right? That intelligent, stubborn dog. And now they don't know what to do, right? Because the dog is not wanting to listen. Just like an intelligent human being. You have to respect intelligence, but it can be a pain in the ass, right? So I think—
no truer words have ever been spoken.
And sometimes people have a problem with that because I fall into the trap too. I see all this fur, this cute face, and all I want to do is dive in there and hug it and love on it. But the dog doesn't know it's cute, right? So it's like, dude, what are you doing? I don't need this. What I need is leadership, right? I need someone to protect me. And if you're not going to do it, that must mean I'm doing it. And that makes dogs incredibly nervous, if that makes sense, right? That's what this is all what we're trying to teach people. And this is, again, to be repetitive, this is why I like it so much.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Education is really the key.
Yeah.
Education, I like that. And so let's do another myth of let's say I was looking for some what people say, but I want a purebred dog.
So there's 30% of all the dogs that are in the shelter are purebred, and it's exactly what I was talking about earlier. People will buy a dog for whatever reason. Either they don't want to go through a rescue or they got frustrated going through a rescue, they buy the dog, and now it's like, oh crap. It's no longer a puppy. It actually has to, you have to actually walk it. It goes to the bathroom if you're not potty training, So you absolutely can get a purebred dog from, the shelter. And I'll go one step further, and this may be a follow-up question. A lot of people are like, oh, I just need to know the background of the dog.
That was my next one.
Yeah. So what's funny about that is there are plenty of people that have both adopted from the rescue and also bought from a breeder as a puppy. And like I said, it gets that 18 to 36 month time period and they start to have problems. And the only person that's had the dog is them. It's not like the dog, came from somewhere else. They've had the dog since it was like 8 weeks old, right? When you can legally take a puppy. And if you still don't do everything right, you can still have issues. It can still bite your kid. It can still get out and attack another dog or want to jump the fence or whatever. So there's nothing wrong with a rescue dog. You're just going to have to put the work into it, just like you would if you got it from the very time that you could at 8 weeks.
Yeah, just to add.
Now, what about? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
A little bit into. Sorry to interrupt. I just got a little bit into that. What everyone needs to understand. I wish someone would have told me this when I was a young man. Dogs live in the moment. Okay. They're incapable of thinking about their past, okay? And they're not any better than the rest of us in the future, right? So one thing everyone has to understand is when a dog is acting stupid in that moment, it has nothing to do with what happened to them prior, okay? Usually in that moment when a dog does something stupid, it's because they don't understand who's in charge or they're not getting enough exercise. It is always that simple, okay? But it's very difficult to execute and correct the dog and make sure that they understand who's in charge and make sure they're getting enough exercise.
Yeah, that was my next one. Okay, so the background. Okay, what about we've heard the people have this this myth of rescue dogs having behavioral issues because of difficult past, or so we've covered that. What about, let's take the background a step further. What about genetic background? So I've seen and heard a lot of people say, oh, I want a dog that that I know has a good, genetic background and no health issues that could come across. And, rescue dogs and shelter dogs tend to have, health issues and bad genetics.
So interestingly enough, if you do the research, a lot of breeder dogs have issues because they do interbreeding to keep that line, right? And so they may have hip dysplasia or, that those kind of issues.
A lot of biological problems, breathing,
right?
Like that.
And they can still have behavioral issues. I mean, frankly, I think I might have talked to you about this before, Liz, but I call it the Lassie syndrome. And I know you're really young, but Lassie, I think everybody knows Lassie is. So people it floors me that people want to hold the dog to a higher standard than they do themselves, right? And so I asked, they're like, well, I need my dog to get along with everybody. And I said, wow, that's really interesting because I don't like everybody I meet. So I don't expect that out of my dog, Right. And I really feel like they want their dog to go find Timmy in the well, protect them when they want to protect them, but don't be mean to anybody. I don't want you to be mean to. And the dog is and then make me a great martini. The dog just doesn't know what the hell you want from it. You need to get
perfect pet.
Right. You have to be in charge. And it's like, you can't hold the dog to a higher standard. Although they are very smart, they don't think like we do. And so you have to be in charge. You have to take care of that. And that's the same. You can still get lots of health issues. I've seen over and over German Shepherds, the English Bulldogs, they have a lot of health issues from breeders. And that's, the same thing. Yes, you can get that from a rescue dog. You might get, somebody that ends up with hip dysplasia or whatever. But, just like us, everybody's going to have arthritis at some point, so you just have to kind of go in thinking that. Because when you have a child, you don't know, right? Even if you know your background and know your husband's background of the child,
no guarantee.
There's no guarantee they're not going to have something, right? And I think people just need to stop thinking these dogs need to be perfect, because they're not going to be, and neither are we, and that's okay.
Well, what we always ask people to do is to pick a dog based on your lifestyle. I'm basically a couch potato ever since I was a young man. I like a dog that's kind of chill. Other people, they're very fit and very into running and hiking. You want to get a dog that matches that lifestyle. Like PJ mentioned earlier, use a little common sense and figure out what attributes you like in your life, and then pick a dog based on that. And it can be anything. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, any dog can exhibit, Chihuahua, whatever, can exhibit what you're fascinated with. It's not necessarily breed related. If that makes sense.
No, I love it. That's awesome. You guys touched every little myth that I wanted to debunk. So can you guys think of any other things that you've heard or seen a lot that you would want to kind of debunk for people watching?
Well, for me, I do get frustrated when people, and I get it, because most people are very warm and they're sweet and they do want to help. And they tend to bring this energy. Oh, I want to adopt because I want to help a dog that's been abused. And it's hard for me to explain in a nice way. Stop thinking that way, because dogs don't like that energy anyway. They need you to be a leader. Doesn't matter what happened to them prior. Just focus on making this dog better and confident, right? It takes a lot of work. And what I love is when they start to realize, oh, it doesn't matter, right? And we could give you extreme examples of this. We've rescued bait dogs, and even bait dogs will not hold on to that ugly past. They're very resilient because they have to be. They're wired in such a way, if I show weakness, the pack is going to kill me. I cannot show weakness. I have to remain calm and confident, right? And to me, that's the biggest. Do you agree? I think for me, that's the biggest fallacy.
I think what people get confused, because they'll say, "Oh, but my dog doesn't like linoleum floors, right? It fell on a linoleum floor and doesn't like the floor." Yeah, so it may have that in its mind, but once you show it that it can walk on that, and I'm using that as an example, but whatever the example is, whether it's men or a guy in a hat or whatever people think, right? Once they've had an experience because we have it all the time. I mean, Steve is one of our main trainers, and they'll say, "Oh, this dog doesn't like men," and I'm over there, and Steve is walking it and hanging out with it and petting it. It's perfectly fine because it's having a good experience, and he's a good leader, right? He's a confident leader. So I think that's it. Once they have that, then they're like, "Okay, cool. I'm over that. I'm just gonna, do this."
Well, that is a very good example of debunking something. A lot of times people say, "Oh, this dog doesn't like men. This dog doesn't like women." What we all need to understand is, and don't get mad at me out there, women. In their world, the alpha is always the male. Okay.
That doesn't mean women can't be alphas.
In our world, women are more intelligent than men, right? Women are way more intelligent than men. So women tend to listen when we're talking. They want to learn. But anyway, when the dog smells testosterone, even at my old age, I have a little bit left, dogs will suddenly change their energy. Okay. Just like us, when we see our boss in the room, we tend to talk differently. Our energy changes. When dogs see their potential boss, their energy is going to change. Okay. It has nothing to do with men abusing a dog. It has nothing to do with a woman abusing a dog. That's just that's just their world.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that we really try to tell people is, I almost don't even like to give people the sad backstory, because they want to keep a dog in that story. And we don't want the dog in the story. Yeah. The dog is not longer in that story. The dog has a great life now, a better story. And so I don't want to pigeonhole them that there's something wrong with them, because there's not. We just need to move on. They don't care about their baggage. We tend to, humans tend to hold on to their baggage. They're not like that. They want to move on. And so I really try to tell, don't feel sorry for this dog who was a bait dog. he has a great life right now. So that's what you should be focusing on.
You can go feel sorry for it away from the dog.
Yeah.
Just go in a
Exactly.
closet, cry. That's fine. Perfectly acceptable.
Well, because if you do that, you reinforce those behaviors and
Right.
you keep them in that victim
Right.
state. And you really don't want that, you know.
Right.
But you asked about other things. I mean, we obviously haven't done in-person events in a while, but I would get people all the time walking up to one of our in-person events and say, I want a dog that doesn't bark. And so, you know, we have a stuffed animal that's on a dog that's on our, and I would hand them the stuffed animal because I'm like, I don't know of any dogs that don't bark. I'm sorry, except maybe the Basenjis, but they yodel, you know, they're still going to make sound, you know? So I think that's the thing. It's like people are like, I hate when people like email me and give me a litany of things that they want. Must be potty trained, must listen, must get along. And I'm like, wow, if you find that dog, I'd like to meet it, you know, because without you working, without you doing that, you're not going to have that. And that is a thing. It's almost like a hobby. You have to put the work into it, right? To be better.
Definitely. And there's one myth that I kind of thought of is all rescue dogs or shelter dogs have had difficult pasts.
No. I'll let you take this one. What's your favorite?
I like that.
No, it's
oh no.
It's a huge potpourri of different reasons. We live in Southern California, obviously. We probably run into more situations where the owners just give up. And they weren't abusing the dog in any way, since they just gave up. And it always is this scenario. We got the dog as a puppy. It was great for a while, and then the dog was just a mess. And it was simply because the family just didn't put the work in.
It's inconvenient for them at that point.
It's a selfish.
A lot of it's like, they are moving. You hear that all the time, right? You're moving.
Having a baby or.
Yeah. You knew you had a dog when you were moving. So why didn't you find a place that could, and I recognize in some places, depending on the breed, that is harder. But, I also recognize there's a lot of people who do it, right? One of those stories that I'll never forget, especially when people tell me that, oh, I just can't take my dog to my new apartment. It was this man, I think it was in Oregon, and his house burned down, and he was going to go to a homeless shelter, and they wouldn't let him bring his dog. He had a pit bull. And so he pitched a tent in his front yard with his burned down house, and he stayed there so he could keep his dog. Exactly. So when you're sitting there in front of me, and I know you have lots of means and you could have easily taken your dog with you, it's just inconvenient. I think about that man. I'm like, that man made an ultimate sacrifice to keep his dog. And, a lot of people do that. A lot of people sleep in their cars and whatever. So it's a little hard to deal with that mindset, but people are very selfish. Like you said, they'll get a dog. And I mean, I had one recently. They adopted the dog at 8 weeks from us. He's 2 years old now, and he's really good, but he's gotten out a couple times. And because when he gets out in his home, he's protective. So he has gone after a couple of dogs. Now they take him to dog parks and do all these other things. So I know he's good with dogs, but the point is the woman said, I can't, I mean, if I make one mistake, he just might go in and then I have a problem. I'm going to be in a lawsuit. And I'm thinking, well, you have kids. So can you not keep your kids out of the street? Like, I mean, I don't understand like that thing. Just don't let the dog go out in the street. Don't let the dog off the leash when it's around your home. But people, it's like almost like they're powerless to stop it, and again, that's not what they choose to put their time into and effort into. Right. And that's the thing, dogs lose, right? Because they're not willing to put that time and effort in it.
Right. So one thing I'm mostly hearing is, and that like we are starting to know more and more, and like a lot of people know, but just to kind of like hit home and emphasize, there's in terms of like behavior and things like that. Steve, I like how you kind of keep going back to like leadership and exercise. Like a tired dog is a happy dog. Like just get out, get your dog out, or go to set him up for doggy daycare, or something. And I lived in an apartment for forever. I had a big boxer that I had rescued, and we went on probably 2 or 3 walks a day, just like a constant, go. Because if I didn't, she was a bad girl. But I love that, like you're hitting home on that, and you kind of emphasize, and I love that you guys are educating as well. I'd like to bring up that the Little Red Dog does have a podcast. If you guys want to tell us about that really quick.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very sweet of you. Yeah, For the Love of Dog. And the show's always split up into 2 parts. The first part is always about dog behavior, trying to help people with their problems, trying to educate the humans to understand that it's rarely your dog's fault. If you're having trouble, it's always the family's fault. so that you don't give up and take your dog to the shelter. It would be great if the little red dog went under just because there were no dogs in shelters anymore. Our attitude is the more we can get this information out and help you figure out how to be a good dog owner, you're not going to give up on your dog. So the second half of the show is always fun stuff. Like, we did the interview with you, which you were terrific.
Yay.
Thank you. We have other guests on, and it's strictly fun and just wherever we find in the news about dogs. It's strictly entertainment, really, for the second half.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I personally love it. I saw one recently, it was like, why does your dog get the zoomies and stuff? I love that. Like, it's like really, really interesting information, relevant information for dog owners. And I think it is like just really informative. And you guys had one also about like the dogecoin, the new cryptocurrency and stuff.
I mean, besides my mom, you're the only one that watches other episodes. Yeah, well, I thought it was kind of interesting, really, to be honest with you, because all the Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, my brain thought it was going one way, and so the person we had on the show really was awesome about educating about why this technology is really around and why big business really doesn't want it to succeed. I thought it was super cool.
Yeah, definitely check it out. Whoever's watching, if you're watching some podcasts right now. And I feel like the thing that we were talking about just before, going over your guys' podcast is, helping people set up to be successful with their dogs, and how you guys, that's your goal for the podcast. What are, let's say 3 to 5, helpful hints that you can give somebody who is thinking about adopting a dog? Like, what are the things, or maybe they're about to bring a rescue dog home, or anything. What are some advice things or tips that you would give people to kind of just really hone in on to kind of set them up for success?
Well, just remember, biologically speaking, your dog is 98.6% gray wolf and has all the same instincts. And so, yeah, we have one dog.
Gray wolf behind you.
Yeah, our puppy dog that we were fostering.
She just got to the trash. She's just tearing something apart right now.
Obviously, everything I'm saying is wrong. I'm a complete idiot. I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Should have put her in the crate.
Anyway, just remember that biologically speaking, it's a wolf. They have the same instincts. And the main thing is, it's always the main thing. You have to lead the dog in a calm, confident way. If you do this, your dog will be your best friend. But if you go in with the intent to make this dog your best friend, you're going to fail. Because
Are there any books or books or blogs or podcasts or anything like that somebody maybe the first hint could be read this or learn about this, something that's resourceful?
That's a great question. And my favorite book, it's a quick read. It is literally what we're talking about. The name of the book is Accepting the Wolf in Your Dog. And it talks about what we're dealing with right now is you have to understand this is not a human in a fur coat. This is an animal, and animals do best when they understand who's in charge. And dogs don't give you that much time to show that you know what you're doing, right? But it's really that simple. It's just that it's hard to understand and execute these rules so that your dog does understand.
I think you could check out our podcast For the Love of Dog, because we do have a lot of things that help with that. But back to your point earlier, it really is about exercise and boundaries, right? So when you said a tired dog is a good dog, I say that all the time, because if you do the walk correctly, and you must walk your dog at least twice a day, every day. And when I'm interviewing, I tell people, when I'm tired, I walk my dogs. When it's my birthday, I walk my dogs. If I want to go out, back when we could all go out to dinner, when I'm out to dinner, I come home, walk my dogs, then I go out to dinner. So I'm making that a priority, and I'm making sure that they're getting walked correctly and enough, because then they go into rest mode, right? So clearly Sunny, who's tearing apart something out of trash, needs another walk right now. And
or
she's
more boundaries.
Or more boundaries.
I'm thinking more boundaries might be the right way to go here.
But if the other thing that you can do is
it's her fault.
That's my fault. You can research. All of us, we all fall in love with things, clothes, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, by the way they look, right? We're drawn to certain things, and falling in love with the way a dog looks is no different, right? It is like falling in love, right? It's a little bit looks, a little bit personality, but you really should research the breed, right? Because if the breed is going to need you know, 4 hours of exercise a day, and that is not you, then don't do that, because you're setting your both of you up for failure. And again, it's the dog that's going to lose, right? It's the dog that's going to probably end up in the shelter, or, you know, stuck outside in the backyard, you know, things like that. So I think those are the things that, you know, you could really research. And even though you might love the way that English Bulldog looks, keep in mind, because of the way that they breed them now, they're probably going to need a very expensive thousands of dollars surgery so they actually can breathe. You know, you're going to have to lock them on a harness, which is really hard when the dog is really muscular and big and strong. You know, so these are the things. If you can't handle that, then, you know, you can't handle a dog peeing on your carpet, don't get a puppy, because it doesn't matter how vigilant you are, you're going to have an accident, right? So these are the things that you could do and really have a long talk with yourself, because I get so many people go, "What, I've been wanting to walk more." Start doing that first and get in that habit and know that you're going to do it, and then find a dog. Because if you think a dog is going to get you out of the house to walk when you really don't want to, that's not going to be the case. You're going to resent your dog, and then there's going to be issues, and then you're going to be mad because he's chewing on the couch or whatever.
Right.
All right, that's awesome. So we have like read that one book, which would be good to kind of like start to set yourself up for understanding, you know, canine language and how you need to kind of project yourself to them. Do some research on the breeds, you know, and if there's a breed type that you're looking for. And I feel like a lot of like you guys, like the rescues can kind of help out, like guide that way. Have the open mind to help be guided. Looks like set up an exercise routine, like a walking routine, and just kind of prepare yourself to have to do that. And what in terms of like the house, you know, is there kind of like we all say, they always say like puppy proofing, but you know, you could like, even when I adopted a 3-year-old dog and I ended up having to puppy proof my home. So what are some things like with their actual living space or their family members, things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I tell people is that I'm not very intelligent, so I love analogies. So I love to give people analogies. So dogs are like men. Okay, if you give us too much free time and too many choices, we're gonna do something stupid. All right. In your house, keep it simple. Don't let them go wherever they want. When you first bring your dog home, you know, maybe just give them an 8x8 amount of space to deal with. And what I tell people, the pro tip is, if you're going to give your dog 8 foot by 8 foot area, I don't want any barriers up. Okay. You make that dog stay in that area. So that means you got to get your biscuit up every once in a while and say, no, get back, get back. Okay. As we start to trust our dogs, we can give them more freedom. Okay. At a certain point, if our dog is being good, then we will allow them to go wherever they want in the house. But when we say, hey, come here, Chip, Chip's got to get his ass over here quickly. There's no asking. He has to do it immediately. Apparently, again, I'm not good because our dog is not anywhere near where he needs to be.
She just say, I was just gonna say, maybe put up there. So our trash is hidden, but our recycling is out, and that's where she got something out of the recycling.
So this boils down to do as I say, not as I do, damn it.
No, but other things, I mean, obviously puppies, you want to keep them away from electrical, you know, wires and plugs and things like that. I'm trying to think.
The same thing as a toddler. Just pretend you're really toddler proofing your house.
It's a lot like that.
It's a lot of common sense. But honestly, if you just keep in mind, don't give them a lot of freedom at first. You're constantly trying to teach your dog that, you know, I'm in charge. You're never allowed to act independently until I say so. So actually,
and that would even be for like an older dog, like if somebody got like a 2 or 3.
Yeah. And cool. By the way, I stumbled on to something that's the most important thing, especially where people fail. A lot of times they treat the dog like their child. Here's why that is a ridiculous thing to do. When we're raising our children to be independent. They no longer need us. Dogs always have to be dependent on us, and their brain needs to understand that, because the only time they do something stupid is because they're acting independently. Okay. If they're constantly looking to the alpha for what to do, what do I do, coach? Then that shows me that the dog understands who's in charge. Okay. And ultimately that really is the base of all the stuff that we're talking about, is you're constantly reminding the dog You are dependent on me. You don't own anything. I will share everything in my life with you, but you have to listen to me.
Well, and a lot of people think that that's mean, right? Oh, I love my dog. I want to give him all the toys and all the food and all the treats. And yes, that those are forms of love. But the thing that you have to remember is they do thrive on structure. Back to the wolf thing, that they know they don't in the wild in their DNA. They don't challenge a pack leader. They don't go in front of the pack leader. They don't make decisions that the pack leader is not allowing. And they're fine with it because dogs, like most people, most dogs, like most people, don't want to be leaders. They want to be part of the pack. And there's not a thing wrong with that. I mean, Steve used to use this analogy, which I thought was perfect, was that, if you've ever traveled with friends or even family to like another country or someplace that you've all never been before, and they're like, Liz, where are we eating tonight? How do we catch the metro?
Right.
How do we exchange our cat? And if you're being peppered with all those questions, you're like, I don't know. And that's how a dog feels.
Yeah.
A dog gets super nervous and doesn't really know what you want to do. Again, back to, do I protect you or do I love everybody? So it's those things that, you just really, and I know it's not really a puppy proofing or dog proofing. And the fallacy is that a 3-year-old is any different than a 6-month-old dog. They're all still puppies. I mean, in fact, we have staffs. I'd say probably wasn't until like they were 7 or 8 and they're still very active, but they still maybe got out of some of those puppy things.
Down, yeah.
I didn't want to break it to Steve that, that our pitties were still going to be puppies at 7, because you keep thinking, oh, in a year, it'll be better, they'll be less crazy, but they're still do zoomies and everything. But back to your original question, I mean, things that you wouldn't even think of, like, look at your plants, are they dangerous? Because I'm going to tell you, they're going to be in them, especially puppies, right? Kind of let your educate yourself on what foods, right? Grapes are very toxic. Chocolate's very toxic. My family dog got into the Halloween candy and ate it. She was very smart. She ate it all, unwrapped it, and left the wrappers, but ate all the candy.
My dog did the same thing as like when I was a kid.
Yeah, they're not
wrapped them.
But these are the kind of things that you really should think about. Again, putting up the trash or hiding the trash, or making sure your fence or your gates, your fence is secure, your gates are closed. We've certainly, we've learned from our mistakes. Our dogs got out of our gate because the gardener left it open, right? So then you have issues, right? So those are things that you can sort of puppy proof or dog proof your house. And they are common sense, but if you've never had a dog, you might not think, oh crap, my plant, if he eats my plant, he's gonna die, so it's those kinds of things that you really could research and think about.
I like that a lot. I love it. Those are good advice. That's amazing advice. Okay, cool. And then one thing that I've noticed with the little red dog is, like, you guys are so good with just your emails, you're engaging, like it draws me in, even as someone, I had interest in you, obviously, like as a partner, but like every week I get it, I'm like, oh, cool. And just the Instagram and everything. What would be like, let's say there's some rescues out there and they're having a really hard time. They're wanting to grow. They're wanting to get more attention. What are like just 2 things, real quick, 2 things that are like, hey, do this and this, and we can help, like, you'll see that. What are some things that you would say?
Hire a millennial. Because
that's not wrong.
Our daughter is one. So I wish she was here. She could talk about it.
I trained her.
Mackenzie is the one that the dogs are going to start barking now. Anyway, the dogs are probably going to start barking now. But anyway, she is the one that she's really good at the engagement. She's really good at making. There they go. Okay.
Dog walker's here.
Because we knew we were going to do this and we couldn't walk it out. Okay, great. Hopefully chat edit that out. Okay. Yeah, so no, she's really good at it, right? And part of it is because she's a digital native, and she's a digital native, and she's, she understands how to use social media. But she's also studied the nonprofit, she works for other nonprofits in addition to ours, and she really knows how to engage people, what works. We all know if I give you a sad story, you're going to be engaged. But she's really good, and she really does dial that in, where she we want to speak to people directly. We want, I want to personalize our communications, and we want people to, feel that and feel like they're part of it, because when they do donate, if they're not helping us save a dog, they're saving a dog, right? Same thing when they're fostering. They are fostering, they're saving a life. And so I think, our daughter really is good at that. And we have lost control of the puppy. Yeah. So
the dog walker came, so it was chaos.
Yeah. So I just think, so back to your original question, maybe want to edit that out, is that, I'd say get somebody who's really comfortable with technology or with social media, because I don't care if you like it, social media is wildly important for everybody, businesses, but especially nonprofits and rescue specifically. And then, just make sure that you're engaging with people, and you're not just looking at them as like an ATM machine, right? You're just always asking them to donate or whatever. Exactly. You have to give back, and you have to give a lot back before you ask. And again, and then you have to show them what that's doing, what they're doing, what they're responsible for, to really engage them and to be part of it, because you want them to be part of it.
Awesome. I love that. That's great. And also I want to bring up one point is, having a dog walker, that could also be another thing that somebody should look into, like before adopting a dog or right before they bring them home, is if you need one, find a dog walker and a dog sitter for emergency like situations. So kind of research that in your area too.
That's so true. Well, I do tell them to give yourself a mental break. It's, if you can afford it, have a dog walker, but don't use that as a crutch. You have to get your dog dialed in first, and then to give yourself a break, maybe once a week, get a dog walker or take your dog to doggy daycare. That doggy daycare is great if you can find a good place. It helps socialize the dog.
If your dog is social.
And then obviously exercise. But you do have to be careful. We have a lot of people that rely on dog walkers 24/7. And they're complaining because they're not working with their dogs themselves.
Because that kind of like interrupts the bond a little bit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like so many people get a dog and then they ship it off to training, which I understand. Everybody's busy. Everybody has a lot of commitments. But the problem with that is that it will be very bonded and behave very well for that trainer, right? So it may not work for you. And if you're not going to be consistent and you're not going to continue that, those boundaries, those limitations, all those things.
It's sort of like confidence being projected too.
Right. It's not, the dog's not going to listen to you. And so just really quickly, we do have to get off in 5 minutes. I'm so sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, I was about to say, like, let's do one more and then we'll be all set. And okay, so this is just for, Best Life Partnership stuff. How has it been being a Best Life partner?
It's been great. I mean,
it really has been.
We've told you, we were so excited that you guys partnered with us for the Red Dog Dash. That was a lot of fun. It was, I think it was really good to get people to expose to what those 2 stripes meant. And it was really cool. We've been using those leashes and the collars for our dogs that are in our program. So you'll see a lot of people, if they go on our social media sites, you'll see it. But no, it's been great. We love the concept. We love that you brought attention, and almost that that it is a cool thing for you to have a rescue dog. And so it's nice that you've created a community. We feel part of that, and we're super excited about it.
That's awesome. And one more question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Plus, the quality is great. But on a selfish level, the reason why I like you guys so much is you're really the first partner that we've had that you do such a great job helping us. Like you cross promote very well. That's, again, I'm being selfish with the answer, but I'm being honest. You've done a very awesome professional job, and at the same time, it's fun. It's hard to be professional and fun.
No, it has been great.
But you nailed it.
It's been a great.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And last little thing here, what do you think the 2 white stripes being like this, having a symbol for rescue dogs, what do you think that's going to do for just dog rescue in general?
I think it's it's going to create a community. It already had started, has created a community. Like you said, you spot them on there, or people are like, oh, I know what that is. And I think that's good. I think, again, to your questions earlier, people think there's something wrong with rescue dogs. Like they must have done something very bad to be in the shelter. And that's not the case. We rescue so many dogs that are just really good. And I think it's great for the 2 white stripes for people to see that and understand that you rescued. So, and you're part of a community. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and too, on a very visceral level, as human beings, we always want to belong to something. And I think it's fun and cool when you see those 2 stripes, and it gives everyone kind of a little bit of cachet. Oh, cool, I'm part of this. I'm part of this.
Yeah.
And kind of F you to the people that bought a breeder dog, right? And I mean that. I'm a big fan of cool. And I always want to be part of the cool. And I think this is cool. I think it's really fun.
It's
Part of the cool club.
Yes, we are part of the cool club. No, we talked about it. It's simple, but it's super cool. It's easy to recognize. And again, I think a big part of what we do with our volunteers, our fosters, is really to foster that community, to make people feel like they belong and want to be passionate and want to help the dogs. And I think that what you've done with those 2 white stripes, absolutely does that. So it's a really cool thing.
Just remember to add the skull. You don't have the skull with 2 stripes.
Well, we'll get something worked out for you. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It was awesome to talk to you. And I look forward to what other ventures that we have coming for the Little Red Dog, for Best Life, and then together as well.
It'd be great to be involved. Thank you so much.
Sounds great. Yeah, we're just great to be partners. So thank you.